Hello, this is Michael Hexter, and welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling GOP and Trump seek to normalize criminal sociopathy slash psychopathy in public life. So, this kind of is an obvious statement that is, apparent to everybody who thinks about Donald Trump and his criminal shenanigans in office, before his office, and after his presidential tenure in the White House, that he is likely a sociopathy. I mean, he acts like someone who has it doesn't agree with, or has no sense of the value of accepted social rules, including basically rules that protect people around him from him and from each other, and so on and so on. In other words, the rules of society, or any society, even if you think the rules of this society are unjust, as a leftist, for instance, you believe somewhere that there could be a set of better rules that can guide our behavior and make a more equal and more just society. But even given a current system of rules in our public life, so in the public sphere, Donald Trump and the GOP are people who seek to violate those rules but to create a norm of violating rules. So led in this case, by Trump. So Trump is the leader. So one of the reasons why he is the authoritarian leader of his cult is that he is the prime rule breaker. He is the person who the followers of him feel justified by his rule breaking. And this is something that predates Trump's entrance into politics, or into Republican politics, in that we have you could say, progressive, and not in the political sense, but a stepwise celebration of rule breaking by Republican politicians, starting really with Ronald Reagan, but there were, you'd say Goldwater also had a similar approach. But in any case, you have politicians who are reactionaries, in the sense of the reactionary really wants to overthrow the existing social order to protect who they think are the better sort of people, the tribe, the ethnic, either majority or minority, whoever it is, who are supposed to be the real people, and not the people who are maybe look different, so on and so on, have different religions, who are supposedly infecting the body politic, or subverting the body politic through their ideologies, so forth and so on. And so I'm trying to give a sort of a broad picture of the reactionary. And then fascism is the active phase of reactionary politics, is the aggressive phase, or the offensive phase, of a reactionary politics in the last 100 years or so of political history. And they are, as I've talked about in previous episodes, fascists borrow from some of the political tools of the communist movement, and they co-opt some of the sentiment of it to suggest that they are also a kind of revolutionary but a revolutionary for the established order, for the traditional hierarchies, and for the supposed biological core of the nation. They have a biopolitics, which is not something I've discussed in any depth in any episode here, but they are focused on a sense of a biological person, or that is their ideal type, and that is being invaded or intruded upon or imposed upon by all kinds of forces. And they are the liberators. They are the heroes. And this is also something I haven't discussed in an episode, but they consider themselves to be heroes. This is an insight that I haven't, I've been exposed to some discussions where recently where that's been brought up, and I think that that's a very good insight into the psychology of fascists. They think of themselves as being heroes, or they play heroes certainly, in service of this embattled minority or majority, but a subset of the democratic polity that they consider to be the real people, and the people who should be the rulers, and should be put in a higher position in society than other people, or maintain a position, or reestablish a position, or ascend to a position of greater power and wealth and so forth and so on than other people in the society, people who are considered to be inferior. So anyway, but the outcome of this struggle, this neo-fascist struggle, is that, or not the outcome, but a means, or a part of it is a sense of breaking rules, and of wanting to break rules for the sake of breaking rules, and showing that one is capable of breaking rules, that one is a contrarian, at least, if not a counter-revolutionary, and therefore someone who is overturning what they consider to be a false and artificial order, usually democracy, or certainly a multi-ethnic democracy, an egalitarian democracy. That's something that they are viscerally opposed to, because it doesn't conform to their ideas of this sort of biological nation that is made up of this quote unquote superior group, or this group that's being put upon, that's been betrayed by, in this case, I'm sorry to talk in such generalities, but specifically in the United States, this is white Christian I guess it's a minority or a slight majority of the population, but they consider that to be the people, and they consider themselves to be the representatives of that group. Many people in that group don't consider them to be their representatives. But anyway, they are convinced of this essence of the nation being this biological group, and that intrusions and so forth and so on. So the obsession, for instance, with trans, basically healthcare for that small minority of the United States that identifies as trans, is part of their effort to create a boogeyman for them to fight, to say, well, these people are against nature and against biology and so forth and so on. Similarly, when they talk about, they also believe man woman, beyond the newer fangled idea of trans healthcare and so forth and so on. There's also not idea, but the reality of that, they believe in a natural, what they consider to be a natural hierarchy of the man over the woman, and so that they are trying to reestablish that, and anything that creates the possibility for that egalitarian relationship between men and women is considered to be anathema, including women having control over their own bodies through ready access to abortion, And so they are opposed to that for a number of reasons. But anyway, so I'm getting off the topic, though, of sociopathy being the way that Trump operates in society, and also the way he's operating now in relationship to the actual criminal charges against him. So I call this episode Normalizing Criminal Sociopathy and Psychopathy, is because I believe there is a normal sort of sociopathy in our society. So I think in a capitalist society, one is often normalizing antisocial things that one is supposed to, get ahead of other people. One is supposed to basically, it's normal to exploit, for one person, an owner of capital, to exploit other people and to dispose of them as they wish, so forth and so on, or to use their labor, or and not to, for instance, have an obligation, a relationship to a person after their usefulness is no longer there for that capitalist, so forth and so on. So that I mean, obviously there are rules and regulations that restrain that, but anyway, but there is a rewarding in a capitalist society of a certain kind of sociopathic behavior, and that gets more and more. You see that expressed more and more in the context of corporate, inner corporate politics, and also in certain sectors of the economy. For instance, in the financial sector, you see sociopathy being enacted as a normal part of everyday life. In other words, that they are Wall Street, the stocks on Wall Street literally go down when they realize that people are getting, that wages are stabilizing or going up, so the stocks go down. So literally, that's a form of normal sociopathy in our society that is normalized in the financial community, or in not the community, in the financial sector of our economy, that is built on that kind of, you could say, zero-sum game, or even negative-sum game, where increased social welfare is bad, quote unquote, bad for business. So anyway, that kind of normal sociopathy is some. I'm not saying it's good sociopathy. I think we need to build a society where that sociopathy is no longer as powerful, if not even built out of the social structure of a society. That's something that is hard. It's difficult. It's not as easy as Marx made it out to be. It's not as easy as other followers of Marx after Marx have made it out to be. It's hard, actually, to build a society without that kind of what I'm calling normal sociopathy. But it's a worthy goal. It's something to think about, and to create a reality-based program to advance. And certainly we have examples of limited normal sociopathy, in the sense of limitations of that, in other words, restrictions of that through government regulation. In other words, social democracy, the social democratic model that is under attack, that has been under attack since it was implemented 70 or 80, it may say 85 years ago or so, in the United States and in Western Europe and in some other countries of the world, and is being fought for in different forms in developing countries. But anyway, but that form of limiting that, what I'm calling normal sociopathy in a capitalist society. But anyway, but we have with, that's now on top of that, or stemming from that, you could say, we have a political force on the right, or that has existed since the social democratic option has been around, certainly, but intensifying in the last 50 years. You could call it neoliberalism, where you have an idea that, well, no, the real logic of society comes from that normal sociopathy. So sociopathy, again, rehearsing for you, sociopathy is about disregarding rules that regulate conduct between people, and basically having no empathy for, or little empathy for, or no empathy for the damages you might do to someone else by doing something to them, or by stealing from them, so forth and so on, by exploiting them and paying them less than you could, or less than, you know, in order to accumulate more money for you or for your stockholders, for your shareholders, so forth and so on. Anyway, so but that that has, in neoliberalism, has become sort of a virtue, and no longer just something that is part of reality that needs to be regulated, sort of a bad side of capitalism that needs to be, the impact of which needs to be reduced by various forms of regulation or public investment, so forth and so on. But anyway, out of that has come the right-wing celebration of sociopathy and psychopathy. And so that celebration, again, started before the emergence of Trump into politics. But you see, for instance, Ronald Reagan, and that the surging of the new right in the 1970s and 80s, a counter movement to the social democratic impulses of the post-war era, and a sense that no, the greater good is served by everybody being a sociopath, essentially, or acting sociopathically, or acting according to the market, meaning you simply have contingent relationships with other people that are all about benefit until there's no benefit anymore, and then you just shuck them, and each individual is essentially an isolated actor in a market that is trying to maximize their return in one form or another. And so that impulse then became glorified. And so we have in Trump, though, even though Trump is not classically, his policy impulses are not classically neoliberal, he is actually, the Neofascism has emerged out of neoliberalism. It's become, in a lot of places in the world, not just in the United States, Neofascism has been the answer, in a way, to some parts of neoliberalism, in that it's created a quote unquote solution for some people within the societies that have been you could say desiccated or made more unequal, made more precarious by neoliberalism. And it's created a solution that gives to this, supposedly this folk, you can say, or the real people, the sort of the better sort of person that the reactionary wants to protect, and dividing society. So it creates a nice division, so the people at the very top can still continue exploiting people as they have always done. But it creates this sideshow of a politics about the other, and about either defeating the other almost by military means, eliminating the other, including, we haven't yet seen eliminations. We've seen eliminationist rhetoric emerge from the right wing again and again. They are trying to shuck. They're trying to totally eliminate, in their minds, the problem. Okay, the people who are annoying to them. But anyway, this sociopathy is being celebrated. So, and we have, in the person of Trump, we have someone who appears in all, even before he entered politics, as someone who is sociopathic in his and even psychopathic. So quick sort of distinction between psychopath and sociopath. They're both considered to be quote unquote antisocial personalities. But the sociopath is someone whose behavior shows wanton disregard for the welfare of others, and rule breaking and risk taking, and likely criminal, often under unfavorable social circumstances, certainly criminal behavior, and often in some white collar criminal behavior under better circumstances for the person. In other words, if they are of a higher social class, or they have more so they were born into more social resources, but they're still rule breaking, unempathic individuals. But anyway, psychopathy is someone who consciously is not only is consciously attempting to scheme to break rules, and is or harm others. Maybe even has a sadistic desire to harm others. So they're intent on they will find people. They become quote unquote the mastermind, the criminal mastermind, often the leader of a gang, and they show no remorse, and they have no. They're cold, emotionally cold people who are always calculating, one can be sociopathic, and I mean they're a subset of sociopaths. Let's say is a psychopath, so they're not distinct from, but they're a type of sociopath who is very cold and calculating, and without this sort of redeeming qualities that some sociopaths show in relationship, for instance, to their families, that they're protective of their families, so forth and so on, or they're somewhat protective, so forth and so on, or they think of themselves as being soldiers in a gang, and they're sort of the underlings, and so on and so on. They show some kind of sense of group loyalty to each other. But they can be manipulated by these sort of, and led often by these very, very cold people who show themselves to be so violent. And so also violence is something that is something that's attractive to both kinds of sociopath. But shows a sign of recklessness and wanton disregard, and also is considered to be a weapon in a way to get what you want. So it's part of getting what you want, getting the thing that you want, no matter what. And so you then see, when you put it in those terms, you see how that meshes with our society's ideal type, often of someone who is, almost, is reckless, almost reckless, or in their and ruthless, really, in their pursuit of their dreams, so to speak, or whatever is what they want, and they will leave behind them a trail of broken relationships, and also maybe even criminal acts that they may get away with or may not get away with, or at least acts of certainly of disregard and wanton and damage, and also, so anyway, the psychopath is someone who has sadistic, often sadistic impulses to do harm to others and create relationships where they are, so they can sometimes orchestrate a group of sociopaths to do deeds that are again that undermine social norms, and so in general the whole group of antisocial person are against and think of as being snitches, or as being uncool, or whatever is the people, the normies, so to speak, the normies, who are people who follow rules, who believe in the social rules as they exist. They think of them as being, Philistine, so to speak. I'm using the wrong word for how that subculture might think. But anyway, but Trump is exactly this kind of person who is, he's not a brilliant person, but he shows also psychopathic tendencies of being able to manipulate other people, being able to organize other people, even though he's also shows often a lot of short-sightedness too. So he's someone who happens to have come from great wealth himself, so he has had the benefit of enormous luck and enormous economic power that he has parlayed into social status, that he then parlayed also into more money through The Apprentice and so forth and so on. And then he parlayed that into his celebrity status, into political power, and into this. He realized intuitively that being this, I would say, psychopathic leader, or this certainly sociopathic leader of the Republican Party, was the role that he desired, that he was in some of that fit his personality, fit his impulses, his desires, and he realized it was a way to also to make a lot of money, to plunder, and so he aspired to and then won the Republican nomination for president, and then was lucky enough to be facing a poor campaigner and a weakened Democratic Party in 2016, and he created a clever message that gained him enough votes to win against that party, and also so he has been, though, on a quest since then to, as I'm saying, normalize sociopathy and to be the chief sociopath. And so when he's been charged with crime, so now we see in 2023, in August, he's just been charged with, a bunch of crimes, and he is trying to, he's saying he didn't do these things, and also at the same time he is, the subtext though, and that he is trying to inspire in his followers to get them to vote for him and so forth and so on, that he is their rule breaker. He is breaking rules for them. He is getting rid of, quote unquote, this deep state that is after him, or the Democratic, what he calls it, they're called a, quote unquote, crime family. He is the crime family. He is projecting onto the Democrats, or he is more of a crime family than the Democratic leadership, if they could be considered that. That's not the first thing that springs to mind with them. I have my criticisms of them, of the Democratic leadership. They're not unified as a family in a way. In some sense, Trump's GOP is more a family in the sense of, but this exactly the crime family that they're trying to make the Democrats or the Biden family seem to be. But anyway, so this effort to normalize, so in the public sphere, in there we have a huge effort by the neo-fascist movement that is the GOP and Trump, or Trumpist movement, or the MAGA movement, is trying to create all kinds of discourse, you could say, or that normalizes words and speeches and actions too, that attempt to normalize sociopathy and to make it seem like the social order is so, in their opinion, corrupt, that it's okay to be so disregarding of rules. And in fact, it's freeing, and it's fun for them. So the fun, the excitement that Trump generates from people is the idea that people are being liberated, his followers are being liberated from this social order that is against them, that it restricts them, and basically being against them means that gives black people, often as mostly the focus is mostly on black people, but also people, Latino people, or Asian people maybe, but mostly black people and Latino people, gives them a role of some importance, or some, that anything that is given to them is taken away from, in their opinion, the MAGA base, or the neo-fascist base, is taken away from them. So they want to eliminate that. They have a belief that that everything that is of benefit to people who are different from them is also, quote unquote, a leftist plot. So it's a far, far left plot. Meanwhile, their opponents are far from left. They're sort of centrist. They're political opponents, and they're, at most, you could call them liberal or liberalish, so forth and so on, but not even passionately liberal like you would find in the New Deal or Teddy Kennedy, even, so forth and so on. So you wouldn't find, you don't. There are a few senators, a few Congress people who would consider to be, strongly liberal, so forth and so on. There are some that call themselves democratic socialists. They're basically social democrats in Congress, and Bernie Sanders is basically a social democrat. But anyway, the right is creating a myth about these people, is that they're far, far left, and they're also they're super in control of society. They're the oppressive, mafia, or state. They're the deep state, so to speak. They're a collusion of the deep state and left, and so forth, so on. And they're weighing down the MAGA base, and Trump offers them a glimpse of liberation from this supposed. So this is in leftist, supposedly leftist plot that and this is something also that Christopher Rufo, who is one of the intellectuals, the organic intellectuals of the neo-fascist movement, who was entrusted by Ron DeSantis, who was also a neo-fascist, to revise Florida's education curriculum, or help in that process, to expunge some of the teaching in that was realistic about the effects of slavery, and attempting to counterbalance that, so forth and so on, trying to change the state New College of Florida, which was a liberal college in the state system of Florida's public education system, and basically make it into a reactionary college. So anyway, the idea is that sort of there's a huge conspiracy. So this I'm trying to explain the excitement about Trump, and why also. So Trump is now being charged, and he may actually spend time in jail if he continues to violate the rules that are being placed on him by the judges in those cases. So he is actually now facing the apotheosis, so to speak, or the zenith, or the moment of truth, so to speak, for his entire political project, to be a persecuted person who nevertheless is very powerful, or very privileged, and so forth and so on, but to sort of to live out this fantasy, and for this. And this group of people who believe that they're being oppressed by this terrible left-wing conspiracy. Anyway, I'm just to be very, very clear to anybody who's listening, the actions of the Department of Justice are not a left-wing conspiracy, are not left-wing. They're not, I would say they're apolitical. They certainly have there are political aspects to them, but they're trying to adjudicate crimes that were committed based on rule breaking, law breaking that Donald Trump did, law breaking that is significant and that is potentially system changing, okay, for the United States, potentially changing the entire system by breaking some rules from the point of view of the president. In other words, having a president who had all the power of the presidency, who was attempting to change the way the outcome of an election, and so and which would have changed how would have broken so many laws and would have made a shambles of the constitutional order and the idea that America is even a democracy anymore. I mean, it's already likely. You could say it's an anocracy. That's a term that's used for, a country that is slipping away from or never having achieved a true democracy. But anyway, we are in a place where it's being fought over on a daily basis. But anyway, the rules being placed on Trump are this challenge to this sociopathic persona and also reality of Trump, that he is now faced with whether he breaks rules or if he breaks rules, and he will face, I hope, he will face consequences for it. In other words, I hope he will be tamed, so to speak, by the justice system, and so he will face justice because of the crimes that he's done. And so, meanwhile, the Republicans are trying to invent other crimes or non-existent crimes by Biden in order to balance this out, to make it seem like it's all the same thing. They're trying to create a swirl of lies to enshroud the American public and also Trump, and to make what he does seem normal, it seem justified, and not only justified but heroic. So and so this I will do another episode about, or I will do another video cast about the heroism or the attempted heroism of the right wing and their self identity. But anyway, I think I've gone on long enough, and I just want to stop here, and because this is what I'm talking about is the substance of much political discourse now. There are thousands and thousands of words, you could say millions of words being transmitted, being written, so forth and so on, that swirl around this issue of, normalize. Do we live in a law-based society, or do we have a autocracy, or where the lead sociopath, the lead, just makes up their own rules and violates existing rules, and is also celebrated for that, is celebrated because he is considered to be this prime rule breaker, and the system that exists is so oppressive to this minority who is his followers. Anyway, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Please like the video if you found it at all interesting or enlightening. Please subscribe to Politics 2100 to get notice of future episodes. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.